All right, let's start also with another story, Ukrainian story. I called it Ukrainian Watergate myself, and I recognize that you might have personal history with Bigus Info and about Bigus as a person himself. You have your own opinion, but I would rather want you to give a judgment over that situation in general, regardless of special services, whether they need to spy on the media. What's important for me is, can the documents collected by security services of Ukraine be used for political attacks on actual people? How it looks like, what's happening. Perhaps it looks different for you, but let me know. Who was being attacked with this information? Bigus himself. Yeah, they took the videos that they recorded, apparently by special services. Well, on one hand, it's some sort of judgment day for them, because Bigus made a career of him collecting the data about other people, and now that he is being run down with the same pill, he is screaming that this is somewhat uncomfortable. I think they reaped what they sown. You know, I'm not sentimental, I'm not too liberal, and that everybody today runs today and chants right mantras to the god of liberalism, that the journalists should not be followed by Ukrainian security services. I would say, as an intel officer, I would say, yeah, that's practical, to make sure that we keep an eye on the journalist. And if you do not participate in that process at all, then our market, our media market in Ukraine is set up in a certain way that you can buy any information there. If you have money, you can ask what you want. And everything depends upon sponsors. Usually it's high level, rather big, near political, or sometimes political figures who make these orders. The journalists work too. And what is happening now, I think, is that let big political figures do whatever they want using the fourth power, but the government might as well follow what's happening there with the fourth power. And we have a separate department called a National State Agency, same as what we had, I guess, before as the agency that fought organized crime in the 90s. If you use it correctly, it can solve a lot of tasks in a positive manner for the common good in Ukraine. But unfortunately, time after time, we find people who are very unprofessional for such delicate work that is required to work with journalism, with media, with religious society. And yeah, the Department for Defense of National Security, they need to be more talented, more perfect, to work without causing these storms and scandals. But unfortunately, we have people there who've been for 30 years working in a much cruder way, and now they decided to investigate the journalists who are doing investigative journalism, behind whom they see rather large political figures from different sides in Ukraine. So I guess that after they've done that, and the journalists helped them to do that, then there was a different agency that actually tracked the journalists, and now we see these materials about them. Well, if you can't work, these scandals will continue to happen. I like the position of the head of Ukrainian security services, Maluk, who said that he, and I would add here as well to his statement, that I don't appreciate the methods that were used, and I am firing them because they're dropping the shadow with the methods they use on the honest security officers who opened 47 agent networks installed by Russia. Our good guys, they're actually destroying a lot of Russian equipment here and spilling their blood over the infiltrators, and these several just did everything they were not supposed to do in the really crude fashion. So, can and should they follow journalists otherwise? Sure, but it should be done more delicately, not like that. In regards to a certain fellow and his company who published the article Liar, Troll, and Virgin, even during Maidan times, and the only actor from Black Square Theater who attacked me personally, I don't have personal animosity against him. When I was lieutenant, I learned to turn off personal emotions, and I'm treating things from the viewpoint of common good. And I'm calling him an asshole not because I'm upset, but because from the point of view of the common good for Ukraine, he is an asshole. And what currently is with people like that, everything is bought, everything is purchased. And the journalists got what they were looking for. And the only thing I might say that in the triangle of SBU, the other special service, and these journalists, probably I would say that our government services should be more delicate in their work. I don't see a reason to cry over the guys who lived their whole life for money, who are getting different compromising materials because they were paid to do so, and that was their path in journalism. They tried to even attack me a couple times, and they got their butt handed to them. Well, I think karma is, catching up. All right, you have very delicate ways to value these guys and complex in a way. I cannot agree with that, but oh, Nikolay, I'm not pushing my opinion on you. We have different opinions and it's a dialogue. That's fine. All right, here's an important parallel, I think, because you also were complaining about political attacks and the use of special services against you. I think they tried to collect information illegally about you. Right. Well, there were signs that information was being pulled, not proven, but there were just some signs that they worked. This information, unlike that, is already definitely collected. There were pictures and videos of what was presented. Right. Well, it's still not proved, Nikolay, in court. Well, okay. But for me, as an editor, I've seen the materials. I think it is proof enough that they indeed were behind it. They collected the compromising material. But I think it sets a very bad precedent in terms of using special services in political attacks. How is that normal? Can you comment on that? Because you criticized the use of special services against you as well. Nikolay, I'm not criticizing the use of special services. It's a very liberal mantra that special services should be outside of politics. No, it's not so. They're always in the political sphere. The officers of the special services are often viewed, even in the books on politology, as the political actors. So to argue with that and say that they are not would be denying reality. In order to follow the law, and enforce the law, there is police. Do you know what special services are done for? Because somebody needs to work in gray zones. Somebody needs to know how to break laws, international and internal as well. So when people are saying that these services are following somebody, they always will. And it just without proper political leadership, they're just mounts of iron and electronics and worthless people. So they're always used in political fashion. But it's coming back to the head, to the use of these services, because it depends upon who and what command is being given. Politicians should be the subject of that research. I don't know what Bigus did, that politicians gave the order to punish him cruelly like that. And what kind of punishment? Somebody recorded that one of his journalists is using drugs. Well, I don't think it's exactly a surprise. And I've read the first statement after the first scandal, and I think the first statement from them was that we face such a crude reality, such a ugly side of reality that without doping we cannot, without additional drugs we cannot cope. They face this reality, nobody else, right? Right, and I just don't know if that's even smart. to use special services like that to highlight that one of the journalists is taking drugs. It just, for me, outlines the incoherent use of special services very unprofessionally and the wrong concentration of services. And I think Maluk gave a right answer to that scandal, where he said that, yeah, it was very unprofessional, I'll replace these officers. Because normally this should have been done in a much quieter way, more delicately. And what political goals could be followed here? These journalists are not political figures. So they're just some figures that you use to attack politicians. So this is wrong goal setting. Because if you're a politician, you should be attacking another politician, not his pet journalist or somebody. Because what happens if we find out next day that Bigus is, I don't know, eating babies for breakfast? Would it change anything? Yeah, people will be saying that, he is eating babies for breakfast, but he is shooting very good investigative journalist videos. So the scope of attack was picked in the wrong way. And the damaged reputation for Bigus doesn't really destroy his career. It kind of works for him in this case. So politicians should be smarter in setting these goals for their services. For example, if they give an order that we need to make sure that paid-for investigations should either lose the highlight on the media stage of Ukraine, or perhaps you can even limit the number of these paid-for investigations. So that's a different task, different scope, because otherwise just following the operator and following him to see how he's using some powder drugs, that's the wrong goal, right? When you learn how to transfer political tasks into special services or military tasks, this is a very delicate and very crucial element of the warfare. Even Sun Tzu back 3,000 years ago said that this is a very important and masterful element. And the question should be posted at politicians who sent special services on the tail of the journalists. That's why we have the saying from Caucasus that says, the real man is not the one who knows how to fight, but the one who knows who is his enemy. Translating that to common language is that somebody who knows what causal connections do different objects have. So you know which one to affect in order to cure the problem. Do you know what's the difference between the dog and the lion? When you throw a stick, the dog runs after a stick. But when you throw a stick with the lion is looking at the one who threw the stick. So in this case, Bigus is that stick. And that agents ran after the stick. If the task was set properly, they would not be following investigating journalists. They would be looking at the root of the problem. Why and who enables paid-for compromised materials that may damage national security, or however they would formulate that. And in special services and army, there's another saying, the way you set the task is the way it's going to be carried out. So if this task was set differently, there would be even different implementation, different officers running the implementation, because if you're saying that we have a serious factor that damages national security, then different people usually go to perform the action with different level of confidence. So it's about formulating the task properly. All right, let's say that you've communicated on this difficult, complex question, I think both morally and politically, but yet, thank you. The question of mobilization is also big. A lot of things happened around it, and people en masse are asking to clarify what you think may be happening. You already spoke about Babinets, about his opinion about this law, that project of the law that was there. Earlier this week was another newsmaker, Mikhail Podolyak, who communicated almost a year ago, on the 12th of April, who communicated that question of mobilization, but only about Russia and for the 24th channel Ukrainian audience. And he said there then that today they're being told, the Russians, look, it'll be worse and worse. You'll be prohibited from leaving the country. You will not be able to get credit. You will be prohibited from driving a vehicle, so you'll be proper slaves, said Mikhail Podolyak. And today we have a project for mobilization that basically almost verbatim, including electronic documents, electronic notifications about conscription that were criticized by Podolyak, that has all of these steps in it here in Ukraine. So it's almost like our power is telling to our people that, hey guys, now the slaves are here in Ukraine. So that was not a fake, no? No, we found the full interview to the 24th channel. We transcribed that. All right, understandable. I worked with Mikhail back then, and I was talking about similar things. Just wanted to verify. This is the danger of black propaganda. Especially it is dangerous when you start believing in it. And now in almost all parameters, we are deep in, at least definitely in the question of mobilization that we were trolling the Russian side about, when some of our people called Russians genetic slaves with that mobilization rules. And what happened, let me ask? So now will be explained that when in Russia they do that, they block their credit card payments and create electronic office for notifications. They're genetic dogs and biological garbage. And when we are doing that here, we're still warriors of light who are defending the country. Well, yeah, and it might have worked for illiterate peasants in the first revolution times, 1917, maybe, when they needed to create an image of a German before that in the First World War, who wants to put everybody on their bayonet. But these days, how can you believe that about Russians and their laws and their methods, and then believe absolutely different about our own laws? You know what's good about war? Very few things. One of them is the karma is really swift. We didn't even have a full year, right? So what lesson can be derived from that? First of all, we'll have to be explaining for a long time why is it exactly like in Russia, but we're fighting for different things and we're better. And I believe they're talented, so they'll probably do it. But the second part, we probably need to understand that whatever comes out of the mouths of people responsible for propaganda, it needs to be corrected. And it needs to be a good lesson, because otherwise there should be a big billboard about that saying that, oh, you don't understand, it's different, right? When the same things happen in Russia, he's a slave. When we are doing that to Ukrainians, you guys are still free. And there is a wider question above that. How come that in our country that is fighting for freedom, for supposedly the whole West, being supported by the West, the warriors of light, what are the other rhetoric we have, best people, whole people is one, for the historic destiny of our country, for language, for culture, for all the values that we talk about constantly, for our children, for our houses, we don't have volunteers for over a year already. And they, so bad, so ugly, so horrible, who want to kill and rape and pillage all of us and take our houses, they have 40,000 volunteers monthly. How we, the system of light, have to hunt down these warriors of light and catch them on the streets and shove them in the buses, and they, the warriors of darkness, have 40,000 people lined up in their conscription sites voluntarily. How so? I might start to get confused about what is light and what is black, what is darkness here, and I suspect it's a lot of shades of gray. Our propaganda guys, and I wouldn't be pointing fingers at specific figures, they definitely need to elaborate more on that. Because right now we have complex historical decisions and we are warriors of light and they are the warriors of darkness. And why exactly they have 40,000 volunteers and we don't? And is there any degree of the leadership of the warriors of light in that situation? That may be a very interesting question. Let's just hang it here in the air. Well, the thing is that in that quote by Mikhail Podolyak to the 24th channel, he is saying that it looks very ironic, such an irony of destiny and a karmic destiny in a way as well, because in Russia they thought it'll be done with in 3 days and they'll be resting on their sofas and drinking beer or vodka or whatever they drink. And it was a lot communicated, especially last year, about the results of counteroffensive. A lot of hopeful materials that will be drinking coffee in Crimea on our side, right? That will be liberating all these territories. And the history indeed is karmic and ironic. And I think the heightened expectations continue to be translated about Crimea and about the borders of 91. Right, we have the interview by President to Italian TV station, where he is saying that indeed on the front it's a stalemate situation. The next day there is a denunciation coming out, and they're saying that no, he said differently. He said that we won on the sea, on the land, we are somewhat slowed down. It doesn't mean it's a stalemate or anything like that. We are just looking for new ways to advance our front. But that all lays on the position of Italian channel, because if they really give us the data, the sound of what President said, there may be another interpretation of the second interpretation, so that people can verify what actually was said. But I have a question. Why do you shun from your own words? Well, Alexei, before that, Zaluzhny was saying that it's a stalemate, and then President was saying, no, it's not a stalemate, and now he is apparently repeating that. And probably somebody approached Zelensky and said, oh, you're saying it's a stalemate, Zaluzhny is saying it's a stalemate, then why are we removing Zaluzhny or going to, if you guys agree so much? Let's change that. So I think that's what happened. But I don't think President should be a figure who is shunning from his own words. He said what he said, and he should be proud about what he says. And when he is saying true statements, we should be cheering and greeting it, because regardless of how difficult it is, it's great that he's speaking the truth. I think on the communication side, the right statement should sound something like that. And that's, again, to him and to his communication services message. Yes, it is a stalemate situation, but we are doing everything to change it. And here are the steps. 1, 2, 3. We increase the production of UAVs. We probably replace military leadership, since we have new strategy. I'm giving hints for free to my ex-colleagues how it should be communicated. They're instead afraid and denounce the statements, and it just looks like a typical disease of the 21st century. The belief in words, that you can enchant the world with your words. When they were attacking Arestovych, oh, he said that, so he must be a traitor, without picking up the context, without trying to understand what the discussion was about, dropping the logic and the symbolical meaning of these words. And then they cherry pick and attack. You can do that when you're a TV channel that got a task to check out Arestovych. I get it. But when you're doing the same thing in regards to president, and you have to explain that, oh, president misspoke or was misunderstood, all these corrections only last till the first real sound being released by Italian TV stations. Because if they would not be shy and would post it, people would see that everything was rather accurate the first time, and people who are trying to correct it, they're just spoiling the real statement. So I guess they are relying wholly on the position of Italian channel, right? And at the same time, we don't know. We don't have 100%. Maybe there was a mistake in translation. But my message here is that President should not be shunning from his own words. You can treat him anyway. Many people don't like him today already, and they judge him for his inability to achieve certain results. But he is still a newsmaker #1 in the country, right? He can always come out and say another statement and publish it. Dear friends, in his evening statements, indeed we are in a difficult stalemate situation, but we are doing everything to correct it. And here is your necessary communication that you wanted to do. Why all this hustle around it? President should not be a figure who is making statements and then denouncing them. This is a wrong strategy for that level. That goes back about professionalism, about the way decisions are made, about the lack of strategy, that people are trying to report pleasant and not report unpleasant reality. Right, there is that interview on the official channel, on their YouTube, the Office of the President. So I think the original track might be Ukrainian there. We need to review it. And I don't think it is a problem whether it was said or was not said. It's just sometimes you have to say what you think, and then you may need to correct it in regards to what you said earlier. Right, because supposedly we need to be talking about, on the president level, about the borders of 91, right? And people don't understand, the ones who are up there making communication decisions. They're not understanding what it costs us in the trench, or the commander of a battalion or a company out there in the front. Because those guys are sitting, 20 of them, changing shifts, holding a kilometer of the front, getting the frostbite, losing fingers or getting wounded. They're being shelled by Russian artillery. They can't really respond in class. They keep facing the waves of attackers. A lot of refusers, very difficult situation. Battalion commanders are drowning in paperwork when they have 30-40% of refusers. And each of them needs a lot of paperwork. It's a whole process, by the way, is the most cumbersome process in the world. We can be talking about that for hours. The army is in deep shit in this regard. They have no time to fulfill their direct duties, and they have to follow a lot of bureaucracy, and nobody is changing anything from our glorious leadership. And with that, army is sitting in the trenches and listening from leadership that we soon will be reaching the borders of 91, and this is our military goal. And they understand that everybody in Kiev has gone mad. The society is supporting the mad power, and they're defending out there on the front the country that is mad, sick, and very detached from reality. Do you think it adds anything to their morale? To their willingness to lose fingers to frostbite or to lose limbs to Russian attacks? No, it doesn't. If the message was different, saying that indeed our reality is tough, we adequately judge the situation and we will be making certain measures. The thing that scares the fighter the most is when the commander is seriously wrong in estimating the reality. This is when the things start to fall apart, because soldier understands that, oh, okay, we're being managed by insane people, or maybe they're temporarily insane. There'll be mistakes, and there's only one way to pay for that in war. It's with your death. And when they see Kiev making statements about the borders of 91, they understand that their position is inadequate. This is how they treat it on the front. But these dangerous things, as they are taken to be dangerous on the press and the media of the president, that, oh, we forgot to mention the borders of 91, we should re-record that and mention it. This is what harms them. This is what damages the society. This is what causes bad things on the front to happen and morale to go down. You just learn to separate two slogans. Again, free advice to these fellas. You separate them. You say political goals of Ukraine and historic duty is to return our borders to 1991. This is our duty in front of our ancestors and the people who died on the front defending us, etc. In reality, situation is different, difficult. The West is wavering, is not supporting us enough. Russia is aggregating more resources. But we're not giving up. We're signing guarantees with the Western countries. We're building and expanding our military production. And that's it. Because the borders of 91 is a big historic goal. We'll never leave that. And we'll never refuse from that goal. But in reality, yeah, I even visited the front, met the soldiers, right? And I see that it is different, because the president generally is making right things, right? He's signing proper deals with the West, regardless of how deep they are, but still. He's going to the West to get more ammo, more material support. So your actions generally are correct. But why so poor communication? It's so simple, right? It's easy to say, I know the real situation on the front. I was there in person. They're saying that one of the shells fell 50 yards away from him when he was there. So he's making proper changes in military leadership, following a certain strategy. Situation is difficult, dire, but we're doing everything to change that. And our main political goal remains to be the same, to return to the borders of 91. On the front, situation is different. And you should know that Russians have done that. Remember how we were laughing at Surovikin when he was pushed out front to say that leaving the right bank of Kherson is a difficult necessity? But it was, by the way, much harder for Russia to do that because they're playing as a superpower and they're riding the wave of pathos here. And emotionally, it was much harder for them to acknowledge that they have to leave these territories for these Ukrainians whom they're not even taking seriously. We can say that we are fighting with the second army in the world, with our territory being shot through with their missiles, but we're still, even with very little supplies, we are not losing, we're resisting. And losing Avdiivka doesn't mean that we are folding down. It means we'll come back and they'll wash in their own blood. And we are in defense position, so it is expected that we might have to withdraw and to lose some territory. While they were at that time were in offensive position when they withdrew from Kherson, it was more difficult, and yet they managed a more adult communication that what we are doing now. Russians are acknowledging they have certain mistakes. They're saying that, yeah, they have 5 generals, 5 army commanders under investigation, and they're now investigating how was the army prepared when they have to withdraw and not fulfill the goals when they're fighting a country that has a military budget 60 times or 12 times less of a Russian military budget, depending how you count. And yet they find enough resources to communicate that, and we don't. This is a paradox. The actions that we have are generally tactically correct, but communication is failing. Once again, guys, I know you will be watching. You already are watching. Just separate this message. President knows what's happening on the front. He was there personally. He's taking right measures, making changes, and we continue fighting. Our political goal remains the same, the borders of 91. This is our duty in front of our ancestors and fallen heroes and historical justice. And that's it. That's easy. I have a hypothesis about your words here. You almost sound like you want President to send Zaluzhny into retirement. Is that true? You're almost like suggesting him how to do that. No, Nikolay, I don't want that to happen. I'm just, again, I do have my qualms with the president. I think that on a personal level, he treated me several times very unjustly. Second, I'm a friend of Yuriy Zaluzhny for over 20 years. And I estimate him to be a very high professional, and I support him on the human level. But I do not allow myself to take one side or another. If you analyze my statements in detail in the public sphere, I only talk about public good. And by the way, I was just suggesting for Zaluzhny what to do in order to follow and to add more to the common good. And I'm suggesting to the president and his communication services how to reach that common good, the situation where it benefits everybody in Ukraine. And that's my vector. I always try to follow that path, despite of my personal preferences. And I'm working with psychology for many years, and I can distinguish my emotions from personal goals and general goals that need to be followed. So regardless of my attitude to President and Zaluzhny, I will not be taking one side or another, and I will be giving hints to both of them to help the common good in this situation. All right, additional needs for mobilization. Interfax gave us this news. They're estimated to be 700 billion hryvnias, according to Interfax. So supposedly these monies were not budgeted, and this is an extra that needs to be fulfilled. So people are asking questions. How could we aspire to do any kind of mobilization if we do not budget for that? Well, Nikolay, this is a continuation of an old Ukrainian, West Ukrainian tradition for the last 30 years to conduct unsupported politics for the last 30 years. It's almost as if you're the head of a household and you're telling, guys, we're going to Maldives. Your wife is happy, she's going to buy swimsuits, kids are happy, they packed all bags, and they're saying, are we going? And you're saying, no, we're not, because we only have 20 coins in our family budget. But we recorded that in our family constitution, and we will be following it, and we will not fret from it. And I even suggest a new slogan, Army, Language, Faith. Let's write it into constitution and the trip to Maldives. And we will be discussing that at every dinner table. We'll be highlighting that everywhere. And that'll be a main program. And the kids and the wife so surprised, asking, are we going at some point? And you're answering, no, we're not. But we're intending to. And then you realize that evil guys living next to you, they now learned about your trip to Maldives and they want to kill you because of that. You know of that, but you're not preparing for that. You're spending money for something else. And then they invade your apartment, they killed a bunch of your relatives, took half of it, and your wife and children call you. They've fled the apartment, they're calling you from another location and asking, Daddy, are we going to Maldives? And you're saying, no, we're still going to Maldives, definitely, but not today. Can we come back? No, we can't, because the apartment is landmined and we're still fighting and it's dangerous, right? And the question that should come is, Daddy, why didn't you save money? Because it takes us 20,000, for example, to go to Maldives and 200,000 to prepare for the enemy invading. And the answer from a daddy in this case, in our case, is that the main way to go to Maldives is to add it to Constitution and to talk about it every evening. You don't need to prepare. Everything else is BS. It's not the way. But I have an idea now. We should also ask our neighbors to mobilize so we can repel these attackers. And so eventually we still can go to Maldives. And that's despite that Maldives already made a statement that they probably don't want to have us there. And they're saying also that it's much easier for the Maldives to build another wall than to help us fend off from the neighbors. And when the kids are asking again, how are your successes with mobilization? The dad is saying, well, we want to, but we don't have enough money for that. And the kids are saying, Dad, you're in the same shit place, I guess. Again, that you're conducting politics that is not supported financially. And then that proverbial father says, well, kids, you don't know about life. The main thing is to announce your intentions. Everything else doesn't matter. So critically, we have a very simple construct. Step one, if you think about it, it's critically important to do the mobilization for 500,000, at least for 300,000. Given that Putin is already doing that, and after the 17th of March, when he is reappointed to be the leader of Russia, he'll emphasize the conscription process as well. Given that the United States are not in a rush to provide us enough technical measures, so it will be, the Russian invasion again will be stopped by our infantry. And the question is, are we going to exist as the country? Are we going to exist as people? And we're failing to even pass the appropriate law, to make it a good law, to pass it in Congress, and instead we continue picking people on the streets. And when eventually things start to go the right way, we figure out, oh, we don't have enough money for mobilization. This is the quality of our governmental politics. And many people might say that, oh, president isn't capable. No, it's not just president. It's everybody in the society. Everybody who allows to be lulled by all these fairy tales from propaganda, all that Congress that is doing anything except for real things that can help officers on the front, such as alleviating the bureaucratic weight or giving them more ways and more rights to isolate the refusers, for example. Because very often there would be a situation when there are two refusers who can really affect the morale on the battle position. Because on the current situation, you cannot do much about that. You have to put them in the vehicle, drive them quite a few kilometers out. And I'll give you an example here. Let's not be just theoretical. I have a very good friend on the front. He has a person in his battalion, and I'm quoting here, a refuser who refused to go out to the trenches, to our positions. For 2 months, we've been recording his statements that he is refusing to. We've been driving him to a military commission that is about an hour each way, because you cannot do anything about him until he is certified by medical experts. And that that commission works only for half a day, from 9 to 2 p.m., because all these commissions near the front line, they're staffed by civilians, and many of them are really understaffed, and you know how they work there close to the front. And there were times during the storm of Bakhmut, for example, there were lines of 600 refusers to one of these commissions. At that time, the front was booming not too far, and these 600 men were just smiling and doing nothing. So we had to transport him for 2 weeks till we finally get our position there and we get review. And eventually we get a commendation after the medical commission. And following the Code of Ukrainian Military, Chapter 13, Subchapter 19, so-and-so person, because of his behavior, should be facing disciplinary responsibility. So disciplinary responsibility, disciplinary punishment is basically getting him to clean toilets twice more. And that's it. That's all they can do about that refuser. Why our system of justice is not following, is not supplying enough resources to military officers to deal with this problem. And that's what it is when I'm talking about unsupported politics. It's the politics that is not supported not only with money, but also with resources, with laws, with bureaucratic decisions, with logic even. And yet we still exploit everything with the pathos speeches. They were talking about the destiny of Ukraine, right? Why are you not doing anything then to affect this destiny of Ukraine? And you know my answer. I think our high-level leadership doesn't care about the destiny of Ukraine. They rather want it to die. And that's what I call martyra. Back in 2014, when I came back from the front, I recorded a video called Cherry Martyra. The last names might have changed. Some physical figures might have changed, but the overall approach, the overall problem is the same. We need to change a lot of things here, and I think everyone in Ukraine needs to go through certain changes in his own mind. And I can give you 2 reasons why we're losing this war. Here's an example. On the Eurovision, a translator does a great translation of a song for those who are deaf. Today, the association of these translators is posting, and I got the screen of that association, that they do not support her. She did not do it professionally, did not do it in the right way. We as association do not support her method. What does it mean? It means that our neighbors are attacking each other. Whenever somebody gets something, gains a momentum, the neighbors are eager to attack him or her. We need unity like we had at the beginning of war so that people would be fighting jointly, not attacking each other. And this is unfortunately our negative feature of our character, the dark side that disconnects us. Second, we have politicians that exploit it. And the next step is it takes a super effort to overcome that problem. And the fourth, we're not making these super efforts. And step 5, we're actually doing everything to make it rather worse. And perspectives, I don't think they're optimistic at the moment. To be continued on part 3.